U.S. Army's senior leadership is setting a course for modernization. What will it take to win the next fight? Plus, it's tried and tested, so why is Kongsberg aiming to put a refreshed CROWS system into the hands of today's warfighters? And is it the next evolution in counter-UAS? Why Defense Solutions thinks its Enforce Air Plus is key to protecting U.S. troops from drone attacks.
Hello and welcome to Washington, D.C. for this episode of Weapons in Warfare. Whether you are a defense enthusiast, military professional, or somebody who's simply curious about the latest innovations in defense technology, our goal is to give you an inside look at the state of today's military in a rapidly changing world. For Straight Arrow News, I'm your host, Ryan Robertson, and we start with the reason why we are here, AUSA 2025. This annual event brings together the Army's top brass, its rank and file, and defense industry leaders, all to collaborate and confer about the direction of our nation's oldest fighting force. We start with the state of the Army and the two men charged with leading it into its 251st year. That's the subject of this week's debrief.
Amid all the pomp and circumstance befitting the branch's 250 years of service, Army Chief of Staff General Randy George and Secretary of the Army Dan Driscoll used the opportunity to stress the importance of being able to answer the nation's call without delay.
We talk a lot about when we built the Army and a lot of the systems that we have, you could take 5 to 7 years to build it, and you could take 15 or 20 years to field it to your formation. We can't do that anymore.
For our Army to meet this moment, every single person, especially those at this conference, must be able to answer yes to one very simple question. Am I focusing my energy and effort so that soldiers are ready to fight and win our nation's wars?
Of course, winning today looks different than it did as little as 5 years ago. While Ukraine was fighting for its freedom, other militaries, including the U.S., were watching and learning.
If small arms define the 20th century, drones will define the 21st. They are the perfect convergence of artificial intelligence, advanced materials, batteries and propulsion systems, sensor fusion, and much more. They are reshaping how humans inflict violence on each other at a pace never witnessed in human history. They are cheap, modular, precise, multi-role, and scalable. And we will rapidly integrate them into our formations like they have at the 101st Airborne Division Air Assault.
What the Secretary is referring to is the 101st's journey to manufacture their own drones at the Eagle Works Applied Tactical Innovation Center at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. General George says that kind of effort can help guide the Army as it continues to push for modernization and develop new partnerships with industry leaders to meet those goals.
I've been down on the floor, and I know there's things that we can help produce at scale that can help industry and look for a public-private partnership, but cost curve is where it's at. This is a hardened drone that has been flown successfully in Ukraine. So that's the other thing, is making sure that that our drones are exactly what we need.
To get there, Secretary Driscoll pointed to hurdles the Army has to eliminate so it can move beyond the traditional way of doing business. Using some very strong language, the Secretary emphasized bureaucratic inefficiencies, empower adversaries, hinder Army operations, and jeopardize the safety of soldiers.
No one can predict the next war, but we cannot wait. We cannot fucking wait to innovate until Americans are dying on the battlefield. We must act now to enable our soldiers. Our window to change is right now, and we have a plan to do it. We will set the pace of innovation, and we will win with silicon and software, and not our soldiers' blood and bodies.
In closing, both leaders said the biggest obstacle to getting to where the Army needs to be for its next conflict is an unwillingness to adapt to the current environment, at home and overseas.
I think the biggest risk for industry is not changing. I mean, we are going to change. The Army is going to transform. We are going to move out with this. We want you to come with us on this, and we need you. Our soldiers are ready to change, and I think everybody understands what kind of world we're in. We have to change.
The next 250 years are ours to forge, and we will. We will continuously transform how we fight, how we build, and how we care for our soldiers. We will break the barriers of bureaucracy, inefficiency, and complacency. We will ensure that America's Army remains the most lethal fighting force in the world, and it starts by placing our soldiers first. This will defend.
All right, for our weapon of the week this week, folks, we're talking about a tech refresh on a system that is out there in the thousands. Here to talk a little bit more about that is John McGee with Kongsberg. John, thanks so much for joining us again.
Hey, for sure. Thank you.
So we have the CROWS system here, right?
Yeah, for sure.
There are tens of thousands
There
of these.
There are tens of thousands of these systems
out of the
across.
system. What does CROWS stand for, John?
Common Remote Operated Weapon Station.
And this is going through a technology refresh right now?
So these CROWS has been in the U.S. military for over 20 years. We've produced 17,000 of them. There's 20,000 worldwide. A couple years ago, we started working with the government to identify the parts that were obsolescent, getting in, and it gave us an opportunity to start to bring in digitization, and replace those analog components. So really what this is we've taken a legacy system, replaced the sensors, taken the analog kind of processors out, given it the ability to be networked.
Kind of walk me through, and I'm sure there's going to be some secret sauce stuff that you can't really say, but kind of walk me through some of the improvements on here that you can point out.
For sure. So the sensors have changed, the thermals have changed, the processors have changed underneath. There's a lot of things you can't see. A lot of it's in the software and the ability of the processors that are replacing with those analog systems to be digitized and give it the ability that, unfortunately, I can't point to those components because they're...
Sure. They're internal.
They're internal.
When you talk about the ability to network these CROWS now, what does that bring the warfighter?
Yeah, for sure. So by networking the systems together, and I talked a little bit before about Ukraine, one of the things we've learned is that you can take these legacy systems, existing systems that the Army already has, and add additional capability to it. You can take a system, you can add a radar to it, you can add some processing power, additional processing power. You start to put those systems together via communications backbone. We don't do that, but we're agnostic to it. We're agnostic to the radars. You start to give a counter UAS capability and the ability to hand off targets between one another.
Absolutely. And that ability to hand off targets seems like that's becoming pretty vital.
It's very important. Yeah, it's our patented collaborative fire control system is really what enables us to take these systems, and not just our systems, we can take other people's systems, other people's effectors, and tie them together to enable us to really give the warfighter the best lethality sharing platform across the battle space.
How's the tech refresh going right now? I mean, are we halfway through?
We are actively in production. Our plant's in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. It's been there for 20 years. Like I said, there's 17,000 out there. Some systems are new. We are building brand new tech refreshes. Some systems are conversions. We take a legacy system and convert it to a new system.
All right. John, really appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, everyone, for our comms check this week, we are checking back in with our friends over at Defense Solutions. You might remember last year we talked about their Enforce Air 2. Well, they have some new products on display at this year's AUSA. Here to talk a little bit more about those products is Jeffrey Starr with Defense Solutions. Jeffrey, thank you so much for joining us.
Great for being here. Really appreciate Ryan. You gave great coverage of Enforce Air 2. You guys are one of the first to actually recognize cyber takeover as a new, separate, distinct category of counter UAS. And we've been building on that ever since. We appreciate that.
Well, hey, we appreciate you talking to us, and we appreciate you, taking the time to explain how all of this stuff works.
Sure.
The Enforce Air 2, for folks who don't know, it monitors the airspace. It can, detect if there's drones. We just mentioned it. It can not necessarily just down it outright, but you can take control over it and then land it where you want it. That was the 2. This is the Plus.
Sure.
So what makes it the plus?
Okay, it might be helpful to sort of chart the evolution of Enforcere by exactly building off of what you said. And I like to use the life cycle of an incident or the life cycle of an attack as sort of a good metaphor or a good concept to how to kind of explain how the tool has evolved. So you're absolutely right. We pioneered the cyber takeover category. A drone enters the protected area. It immediately is detected. It sets off an alert to all the operators and all the systems. At that point, it's tracking and locating not just the drone, but also the pilot, the takeoff position, and then it's identifying the key attributes, the make, the model, manufacturer, the capabilities. Is it friendly? Is it authorized? Is it unauthorized? A huge number of drones are actually getting down nowadays by friendly fire. So you want to eliminate that possibility. And then we offer the mitigation option, unique, not jamming, not kinetic, of actually taking it over and landing it with a safe route to a safe landing spot. We also offer the option of what's called a fend-off, sending it back where it came from or causing it to hover in place while you get a better sighting on it. Or alternatively, friendly, letting it go on. Now, what happens with Enforcere Plus, some people have described it as multi-layer right out of the box. So what we've integrated here is radar and a built-in jammer. So that kind of changes the game even further and extends our coverage of dangerous drones really on a much larger scale. So we're still cyber-centric, we're still cyber-first. We still position that the vast majority, huge percentage of commercial off-the-shelf drone threats, including do-it-yourself drones and other rogue drones, are going to be detected, identified, and mitigated with our cyber technique. However, to go beyond cyber and for more peace of mind, and for example, coverage of totally radio silent, dead dark drones, or those kind of situations that are possibly beyond the knowledge base of cyber, you have radar to detect those. And even for the drones that the RF cyber detects, you also get the radar data now. And the radar data and the RF cyber data come together, and that's what this fusion box is. So for greater situational awareness, on one UX, on one screen, you're seeing both. The data, converge together from both the radar and the RF. That's on the detection side, and then you have that greater situational awareness. Then, if the drone is in fact deemed to be a threat, and if it goes beyond the capabilities of RF cyber, you do now have the option of jamming, very precise jamming, for that event, for that situation, for that peace of mind. So we're still cyber-centric, we're still all the great things, non-disruptive, no collateral damage, but we have an additional layer now on the radar on the detection side and an optional jamming on the mitigation side. So there's a lot of interest in it, very excited both from our existing users as well as our new prospects who now see it, as going beyond cyber, but also still staying with the cyber concept at the core.
Absolutely. That all makes perfect sense. Can you talk a little bit about where this system might be deployed right now, or where you're thinking about, potential deployment for?
Sure. And I should emphasize, it's tried, it's true, it's proven. Many of our existing customers, had early access to it, of course, and have actually used it in the field with great feedback, really great results in terms of the operational results of what it's able to detect and mitigate and jam if necessary. But it's sort of all of our traditional core sectors, so definitely military. Military not only for forward operating forces and bases, but also for domestic homeland bases where there's an especially acute problem from commercial off-the-shelf drones. But Homeland Security continues to be a big application as well. Airports and aviation, we're making huge headway in, and law enforcement. So all of those, now critical infrastructure is also growing. And we expect the market to grow, especially in the US, as we get closer, hopefully, to legislation, which will extend the authorities to state and local. Then the market's going to open up even more. That's from a sector point of view, and from a region point of view, where we're in over 30 countries throughout Europe, Asia, and the Americas as well.
You bet. Jeffrey, thank you so much for joining us
today.
Thank
you very much. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
All opinions expressed in this segment are solely the opinions of the contributors.
All right, folks, that's going to just about do it for us this week on this episode of Weapons and Warfare. But before we say goodbye, I want to bring in our senior producer and Air Force veteran, Brett Baker. Brett, first kind of initial thoughts from this year's AUSA 2025.
Well, it's only our second, so we have a small base to draw from. But I would say pretty well attended. I think I saw fewer guys in BDUs, guys and gals, regular rank and file Army folks here this year. Maybe it has to do with the shutdown. But overall, pretty well attended. Good vibe. Everybody, there's a lot of new vendors here. That was one of the things I noticed too. A lot of new vendors here. So a lot of people are getting in the game.
Absolutely. So what was kind of one thing that caught your eye, right? Like one newsworthy event that you thought, hey, we should talk about that?
Well, kind of going back on drawing on our history, we've seen some of the smaller groups that had smaller booths when we started doing this grow. So you're seeing a lot of the results of folks being invested in, building out the company. It's always kind of like a sign of how well they're doing by how big their booth is.
Sure.
And I think we've seen a lot of that, like, Red Cat, much bigger booth. Andrel now has a giant booth.
Huge booth, yeah.
Yeah. So you can see the kind of the results of what this new focus on modernizing the military is doing for these contractors.
And really that open source architecture, right? Like we have the platform, but any maker of a sensor or an intercept device of some sort, the platforms are agnostic as far as what sensors you put on it, what kind of effectors you might put on it. So you really kind of see the integration. And I guess that's my big takeaway, kind of piggybacking on yours, is we've done enough reports, been to enough of these shows with enough of these weapon systems, and now we're starting to see them really get incorporated into some of these other bigger, larger platforms. For instance, we were talking to Echodyne, right? Echodyne makes these little radars, and we start seeing those radars pop up on smaller turrets and remote weapon stations and that sort of thing. So kind of just interesting to see the integration of all the weapon systems. Finally, Brett, it's AUSA. It's the biggest get-together for the
all
biggest
the cool
service
toys are
branch.
here.
Yeah, all the cool toys. What was one cool toy that stuck out in your mind?
The XMAF. It's one thing to see a vehicle that large, but it's another thing to see a vehicle that large that will operate unmanned.
Mm-hmm.
That thing is massive. It would look at home in a mine, like a quarry where they're pulling out rocks and gravel and stuff.
Sure.
But this thing is going to be unmanned. And I think that's pretty impressive to build something on that scale that they can just truck out to wherever without putting somebody else in harm's way.
Absolutely. Speaking of unmanned, that's kind of, the big push around the world for technology. So Sikorsky, a division of Lockheed Martin, unveiled their U-Hawk this week, which is the unmanned Black Hawk. Basically took out the cockpit, anything that a human might need to fly the thing, and replaced it with cargo capacity. And they can do like side launched effects. They can open up the front hatch, and a UGV can roll out. Really just kind of shows the integration of unmanned systems with unmanned systems carrying other unmanned systems
and repurposing an airframe. It was a 1991 helicopter that they put that into. So finding new life and new job sets for old equipment is pretty impressive.
Absolutely. All right, Brett, really appreciate you joining us today. And as always, folks, all those stories that we just got done talking about, we are going to roll those out in the weeks and months ahead. So keep it tuned right here to Weapons and Warfare on Straight Arrow News. In the meantime, for senior producer Brett Baker, video editor Brian Spencer, graphics artist Dakota Patillo, and photographer Sam Beatty, I'm Ryan Robertson with Straight Arrow News, signing off.